Good morning, students. So today we begin with the work of wind. In the last two classes, we learnt about an important agent of gradation, that is the river, which sculptures the most important and well-versed sculptures on the earth. Today we will be learning about how the wind, which is another very important of gradation, does the work of sculpturing of the earth's surface. So let us begin with it. Now, as far as the work of wind is concerned, it is the natural horizontal movement of air on the earth's surface. So wind is moving air which is moving horizontally on the surface of the earth. It varies in strength from light to a hurricane. You can see over here how a light breeze may become such a strong, stormy hurricane. Wind is also an important agent of gradation. It is the most powerful agent of gradation in the arid or the desert areas. And it is mainly because of the following reasons. In the arid area, due to very low rainfall, there is rapid evaporation, which makes the land very dry. There is no moisture bind the soil. So the dry and loose particles of the soil can be easily carried away by wind. Elsewhere we find the sparse natural vegetation helps the wind to blow swiftly, resulting into the wearing away of the rock surface and carrying the sand particles with it. The loose rock material carried by the wind works as a tool of erosion. As the wind blows, some of the particles are suspended, some are jumping and hopping, and some are flowing or blowing along with the wind but very close to the surface, which we call as creep. And they all are tools for the erosive nature of the wind. Strong winds can carry more amount of sand, dust and gravel up to a longer distance due to the absence of vegetation cover. The soft rocks get easily eroded compared to the harder rocks. So when the wind is blowing, all these softer rocks will get easily eroded. Here also we can see how the harder rocks have remained while all these softer rocks over here have got easily eroded. High daily temperatures and annual range of temperature causes the weathering of the rocks. A strong wind, fully armed with hard and pointed sand particles, can rub the surface and erode them very easily. Dust, sand may be transported by wind for hundreds of kilometers, but the force of gravity relatively less affects the transportation work of wind, because winds can transport material even up the slope. When the speed of wind decreases, it starts depositing sand, dust at different places. Thus, wind also does the work of erosion, transportation, and deposition, just like other agents of gradation. So here we see how a strong wind, which is armed with hard and pointed sand particles, has brought about a change on the surface of these rocks. From a distance, these rocks look as if they have been painted, but they have actually been eroded, rubbed, abrased by the work of wind. Now let us learn what are the ways by which wind does the work of erosion. Now, erosion by wind includes deflation. Now, what do you mean by this term deflation? It is the process of removing, lifting, and blowing away of the fine loose particles or rock debris from the surface by winds, especially in arid or semi-arid areas. You can see over here, these are the fine sand which have been removed by the work of wind, and a hollow-like structure has been made, which is known as deflation hollow. Such loose fine rock material is found in the arid areas which are lacking the protection of vegetation. So, such kind of deflation is being done in areas which does not have much vegetation, and this results in the finer dust particles to be removed and the waste leaving behind the bedrock. Finer dust particles get removed and the bedrock remains. Now, due to deflation, large hollows or depressions are formed, which we call as deflation hollows. The Quattara Depression in the Sahara Desert. See over here, huge depression. I've got both the maps as well as the impression of how big this Quattara Depression is in Egypt and in the midst of the Sahara. So this Quattara Depression is in the Sahara Desert, is a large depression which has been made by winds. It is hundreds of meters below the sea level. The winds and storms cause the removal of the sand particles. The depression is so low, that is about hundreds of meters lower than the sea level, that water has also got accumulated over here. So the winds and the storms cause the removal of sand particles from their original position. So here we see water has got accumulated because of the rock which is found as the bed of the depression. Now, sometimes such deflation hollows touch the groundwater and they form oases in the desert. And such oasis supports life and plant life. And oasis is an area in a hot desert where the presence of water at suitable level permits the growth of plant life. See over here how this beautiful oasis has come up, and all this due to the work of deflation, which is part of erosive action of the wind. Now it is a fertile area because water is available, and it is usually very small and isolated. It is having a spring, that is a water body. Now such oases may be very small areas supporting a few palm trees, or may extend to hundreds of square kilometers supporting a large agricultural population. Such oases are common along the Nile, which are very large, or along the Euphrates and the Tigris. They are in Iraq. Central, you can say it is on the western part of Asia, east of Jordan. It is in Iraq. Here we can see another oasis, which is in the Thar Desert in Jaisalmer. So this is in India, and Jaisalmer is in the far western corner of Rajasthan and in the midst of the Thar Desert. And this oasis is in the Thar Desert in Jaisalmer. Apart from erosive action of the wind also does the work of abrasion. And it is a process of wearing away the exposed rock surfaces by the impact of sand particles carried by the wind. So we have already learned that the wind is armed with sand particles as it blows, and also certain small pebbles, and they are suspended. That is, these particles are suspended, and these are hopping and jumping along with the flow of the wind. And in abrasion, the sandblast action of wind results in the polishing of the surface. This diagram will explain how the sand blasting effects does the polishing of the surface. Here we can see the wind is carrying the particles with it, and when it comes in contact with a rock, it does the work of polishing. Gradually, it wears down the rock. Due to the speed of the wind, the rock sometimes gets rotated to the side which is unpolished, now faces the wind. That also gets polished. Here we can see that all these areas, the upper part of the rocks, have all been rounded and polished due to the abrasive nature of the wind. When the wind blows, carrying sand particles with it, the maximum amount of sand particles are blown just above the ground. You can see that how only these areas which are closer to the ground have got affected. The rest have not been affected. Areas which are far higher, they have not been affected by the abrasive nature of the wind. So this is the reason why we find the wooden electric poles to be having a metallic cover about a meter height, so that they do not get abraded by the action of the wind, especially in the desert areas. So they are protected by a metallic cover. Attrition is when the sand particles roll and collide against one another while blowing with the sand. So we have already learnt how the wind is carrying suspended particles along with it, and they are all rolling, colliding against one another while they are blowing along with the sand. They are reduced in their sizes and become smaller and smaller. You can see over here how the grains or the rocks begin to become rounded and smaller in size. And this process of wind erosion is known as attrition. So the rock particles not only abrade the exposed hard rock, but they themselves are also abraded by colliding against one another. This produces rounded appearance of the individual fragments. The bigger particles move along the surface by strong winds which collide with one another and further gets reduced to finer particles like sand. So along with the smaller particles, there are bigger particles also which are moving along the surface, and they collide against one another and they get reduced to smaller pieces, and finally they turn into sand particles. So today we have learned how the wind does the work of deflection, then it does the work of abrasion, that is polishing, and how it does the work of attrition, that is each particle are polishing one another, rounding one another and bringing them to become smaller and smaller. In the next class, we will be learning about the transportation and deposition work of wind, as well as what are the different features which the wind is able to make in an area where it can blow relentlessly without any hindrance. So that is what we have enough time for today. Thank you.